T-minus 10, 9, 8,
The clock is
7.
operating. We're underway.
Tranquility Base here.
Endeavor, go at throttle up.
As well as the missile launch this morning by North Korea. Tens of thousands of people, it looks like, in the Hradanska Nemeshti Square by Prague Castle. A rather ecstatic relation and audience appreciation. Let's take a listen to what Mr. Obama is saying.
Today, I'm proud to stand here with you in the middle of this great city, in the center of Europe. And to paraphrase one of my predecessors, I am also proud to be the man who brought Michelle Obama to Prague. Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, to all the dignitaries who are here, thank you for your extraordinary hospitality, and to the people of the Czech Republic, thank you for your friendship to the United States. I've learned over many years to appreciate the good company and the good humor of the Czech people in my hometown of Chicago. Behind me is a statue of a hero of the Czech people, Tomáš Masaryk. In 1918, after America had pledged its support for Czech independence, Masaryk spoke to a crowd in Chicago that was estimated to be over 100,000. I don't think I can match his record, but I am honored to follow his footsteps from Chicago to Prague. For over 1,000 years, Prague has set itself apart from any other city in any other place. You've known war and peace. You've seen empires rise and fall. You've led revolutions in the arts and science, in politics and in poetry. Through it all, the people of Prague have insisted on pursuing their own path and defining their own destiny. And this city, this golden city, which is both ancient and youthful, stands as a living monument to your unconquerable spirit. When I was born, the world was divided, and our nations were faced with very different circumstances. Few people would have predicted that someone like me would one day become the President of the United States. Few people would have predicted that an American president would one day be permitted to speak to an audience like this in Prague. Few would have imagined that the Czech Republic would become a free nation, a member of NATO, a leader of a united Europe. Those ideas would have been dismissed as dreams. We are here today because enough people ignored the voices who told them that the world could not change. We're here today because of the courage of those who stood up and took risks to say that freedom is a right for all people, no matter what side of a wall they live on, and no matter what they look like. We are here today because of the Prague Spring, because the simple and principled pursuit of liberty and opportunity shamed those who relied on the power of tanks and arms to put down the will of a people. We are here today because 20 years ago, the people of this city took to the streets to claim the promise of a new day and the fundamental human rights that had been denied them for far too long. Sametova Revolution. The Velvet Revolution taught us many things. It showed us that peaceful protests could shake the foundations of an empire and expose the emptiness of an ideology. It showed us that small countries can play a pivotal role in world events, and that young people can lead the way in overcoming old conflicts. And it proved that moral leadership is more powerful than any weapon. That's why I am speaking to you in the center of a Europe that is peaceful, united, and free. Because ordinary people believed that divisions could be bridged, even when their leaders did not. They believed that walls could come down, that peace could prevail. We are here today because Americans and Czechs believed against all odds that today could be possible. We share this common history, but now this generation, our generation, cannot stand still. We too have a choice to make. As the world has become less divided, it has become more interconnected. And we've seen events move faster than our ability to control them. A global economy in crisis, a changing climate, the persistent dangers of old conflicts, new threats, and the spread of catastrophic weapons. None of these challenges can be solved quickly or easily. But all of them demand that we listen to one another and work together, that we focus on our common interests, not on occasional differences, and that we reaffirm our shared values, which are stronger than any force that could drive us apart. That is the work that we must carry on. That is the work that I've come to Europe to begin. To renew our prosperity, we need action coordinated across borders. That means investments to create new jobs. That means resisting the walls of protectionism that stand in the way of growth. That means a change in our financial system with new rules to prevent abuse and future crisis. And we have an obligation to our common prosperity and our common humanity to extend a hand to those emerging markets and impoverished people who are suffering the most, even though they may have had very little to do with financial crises. Which is why we set aside over $1 trillion for the International Monetary Fund earlier this week to make sure that everybody receives some assistance. To protect our planet, now is the time to change the way that we use energy. Together we must confront climate change by ending the world's dependence on fossil fuels. By tapping the power of new sources of energy like the wind and sun, and calling upon all nations to do their part. And I pledge to you that in this global effort, the United States is now ready to lead. To provide for our common security, we must strengthen our alliance. You know, NATO was founded 60 years ago, after communism took over Czechoslovakia. That was when the free world learned too late that it could not afford division. So we came together to forge the strongest alliance that the world has ever known. And we stood shoulder to shoulder, year after year, decade after decade, until an iron curtain was lifted and freedom spread like flowing water. This marks the 10th year NATO membership for the Czech Republic. And I know that many times in the 20th century, decisions were made without you at the table. Great powers let you down or determined your destiny without your voice being heard. I'm here to say that the United States will never turn its back on the people of this nation. We are bound by shared values, shared history. We are bound by shared values and shared history and the enduring promise of our alliance. NATO's Article 5 states it clearly, an attack on one is an attack on all. That is a promise for our time and for all time. The people of the Czech Republic kept that promise after America was attacked. Thousands were killed on our soil, and NATO responded. NATO's mission in Afghanistan is fundamental to the safety of people on both sides of the Atlantic. We are targeting the same al-Qaeda terrorists who have struck from New York to London and helping the Afghan people take responsibility for their future. We are demonstrating that free nations can make common cause on behalf of our common security. And I want you to know that we honor the sacrifices of the Czech people in this endeavor, and more in the loss of those you've lost. But no alliance can afford to stand still. We must work together as NATO members so that we have contingency plans in place to deal with new threats, wherever they may come from. We must strengthen our cooperation with one another and with other nations and institutions around the world to confront dangers that recognize no borders. And we must pursue constructive relations with Russia on issues of common concern. Now, one of those issues that I'll focus on today is fundamental to the security of our nations and to the peace of the world. That's the future of nuclear weapons in the 21st century. The existence of thousands of nuclear weapons is the most dangerous legacy of the Cold War. No nuclear war was fought between the United States and the Soviet Union. But generations lived with the knowledge that their world could be erased in a single flash of light. Cities like Prague, that existed for centuries, that embodied the beauty and the talent of so much of humanity, would have ceased to exist. Today, the Cold War has disappeared, but thousands of those weapons have not. In a strange turn of history, the threat of global nuclear war has gone down, but the risk of a nuclear attack has gone up. More nations have acquired these weapons. Testing has continued. Black market trade in nuclear secrets and nuclear materials abound. The technology to build a bomb has spread. Terrorists are determined to buy, build, or steal one. Our efforts to contain these dangers are centered on a global non-proliferation regime, but as more people and nations break the rules, we could reach the point where the center cannot hold. Now, understand, this matters to people everywhere. One nuclear weapon exploded in one city, be it New York or Moscow, Islamabad or Mumbai, Tokyo or Tel Aviv, Paris or Prague, could kill hundreds of thousands of people. And no matter where it happens, there is no end to what the consequences might be for our global safety, our security, our society, our economy, to our ultimate survival. Some argue that the spread of these weapons cannot be stopped, cannot be checked, that we are destined to live in a world where more nations and more people possess the ultimate tools of destruction. Such fatalism is a deadly adversary. For if we believe that the spread of nuclear weapons is inevitable, then in some way we are admitting to ourselves that the use of nuclear weapons is inevitable. Just as we stood for freedom in the 20th century, we must stand together for the right of people everywhere to live free from fear in the 21st century. And as nuclear power, as a nuclear power, as the only nuclear power to have used a nuclear weapon, the United States has a moral responsibility to act. We cannot succeed in this endeavor alone, but we can lead it. We can start it. So today, I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons. I'm not naive. This goal will not be reached quickly, perhaps not in my lifetime. It will take patience and persistence. But now we too must ignore the voices who tell us that the world cannot change. We have to insist, yes, we can. Now let me describe to you the trajectory we need to be on. First, the United States will take concrete steps towards a world without nuclear weapons. To put an end to Cold War thinking, we will reduce the role of nuclear weapons in our national security strategy and urge others to do the same. Make no mistake, as long as these weapons exist, the United States will maintain a safe, secure, and effective arsenal to deter any adversary and guarantee that defense to our allies, including the Czech Republic. But we will begin the work of reducing our arsenal. To reduce our warheads and stockpiles, we will negotiate a new strategic arms reduction treaty with the Russians this year. President Medvedev and I began this process in London, and will seek a new agreement by the end of this year that is legally binding and sufficiently bold. And this will set the stage for further cuts, and we will seek to include all nuclear weapon states in this endeavor. To achieve a global ban on nuclear testing, my administration will immediately and aggressively pursue U.S. ratification of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. After more than 5 decades of talks, it is time for the testing of nuclear weapons to finally be banned. And to cut off the building blocks needed for a bomb, the United States will seek a new treaty that verifiably ends the production of fissile materials intended for use in state nuclear weapons. If we are serious about stopping the spread of these weapons, then we should put an end to the dedicated production of weapons-grade materials that create them. That's the first step. Second, together we will strengthen the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty as a basis for cooperation. The basic bargain is sound. Countries with nuclear weapons will move towards disarmament. Countries without nuclear weapons will not acquire them, and all countries can access peaceful nuclear energy. To strengthen the treaty, we should embrace several principles. We need more resources and authority to strengthen international inspections. We need real and immediate consequences for countries caught breaking the rules or trying to leave the treaty without cause. And we should build a new framework for civil nuclear cooperation, including an international fuel bank, so that countries can access peaceful power without increasing the risk of proliferation. That must be the right of every nation that renounces nuclear weapons, especially developing countries embarking on peaceful programs. And no approach will succeed if it's based on the denial of rights to nations that play by the rules. We must harness the power of nuclear energy on behalf of our efforts to combat climate change and to advance peace and opportunity for all people. But we go forward with no illusions. Some countries will break the rules. That's why we need a structure in place that ensures when any nation does, they will face consequences. Just this morning, we were reminded again of why we need a new and more rigorous approach to address this threat. North Korea broke the rules, once again, by testing a rocket that could be used for long-range missiles. This provocation underscores the need for action, not just this afternoon at the UN Security Council, but in our determination to prevent the spread of these weapons. Rules must be binding. Violations must be punished. Words must mean something. The world must stand together to prevent the spread of these weapons. Now is the time for a strong international response. Now is the time for a strong international response, and North Korea must know that the path to security and respect will never come through threats and illegal weapons. All nations must come together to build a stronger global regime. That's why we must stand shoulder to shoulder to pressure the North Koreans to change course. Iran has yet to build a nuclear weapon. My administration will seek engagement with Iran based on mutual interests and mutual respect. We believe in dialogue. But in that dialogue, we will present a clear choice. We want Iran to take its rightful place in the community of nations, politically and economically. We will support Iran's right to peaceful nuclear energy with rigorous inspections. That's a path that the Islamic Republic can take. Or the government can choose increased isolation, international pressure, and a potential nuclear arms race in the region that will increase insecurity for all. So let me be clear. Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile activity poses a real threat, not just to the United States, but to Iran's neighbors and our allies. The Czech Republic and Poland have been courageous in agreeing to host a defense against these missiles. As long as the threat from Iran persists, we will go forward with a missile defense system that is cost-effective and proven. If the Iranian threat is eliminated, we will have a stronger basis for security, and the driving force for missile defense construction in Europe will be removed. So, finally, we must ensure that terrorists never acquire a nuclear weapon. This is the most immediate and extreme threat to global security. One terrorist with one nuclear weapon could unleash massive destruction. Al-Qaeda has said it seeks a bomb and that it would have no problem with using it. And we know that there is unsecured nuclear material across the globe. To protect our people, we must act with a sense of purpose without delay. So today I am announcing a new international effort to secure all vulnerable nuclear material around the world within 4 years. We will set new standards, expand our cooperation with Russia, pursue new partnerships to lock down these sensitive materials. We must also build on our efforts to break up black markets, detect and intercept materials in transit, and use financial tools to disrupt this dangerous trade. Because this threat will be lasting, we should come together to turn efforts such as the Proliferation Security Initiative and the Global Initiative to Combat Nuclear Terrorism into durable international institutions. And we should start by having a global summit on nuclear security that the United States will host within the next year. Now, I know that there are some who will question whether we can act on such a broad agenda. There are those who doubt whether true international cooperation is possible, given the inevitable differences among nations. And there are those who hear talk of a world without nuclear weapons and doubt whether it's worth setting a goal that seems impossible to achieve. But make no mistake, we know where that road leads. When nations and peoples allow themselves to be defined by their differences, the gulf between them widens. When we fail to pursue peace, then it stays forever beyond our grasp. We know the path when we choose fear over hope. To denounce or shrug off a call for cooperation is an easy but also a cowardly thing to do. That's how wars begin. That's where human progress ends. There is violence and injustice in our world that must be confronted. We must confront it not by splitting apart, but by standing together as free nations, as free people. I know that a call to arms can stir the souls of men and women more than a call to lay them down. But that is why the voices for peace and progress must be raised together. Those are the voices that still echo through the streets of Prague. Those are the ghosts of 1968. Those were the joyful sounds of the Velvet Revolution. Those were the Czechs who helped bring down a nuclear-armed empire without firing a shot. Human destiny will be what we make of it. And here in Prague, let us honor our past by reaching for a better future. Let us bridge our divisions, build upon our hopes, accept our responsibility to leave this world more prosperous and more peaceful than we found it. Together, we can do it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Prague.
Well, at times it sounded a bit like an pre-election address, didn't it? Barack Obama addressing those rapturous crowds in the Czech Republic. He told the crowd the risk of nuclear attack in the world had risen in recent years. Its technology had spread with a greater danger from terrorists. Mr. Obama said America would seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons. He said he'd begin the work of reducing its arsenal of nuclear weapons and negotiate a new strategic arms reduction treaty with Russia by the end of this year. He also promised to seek United States ratification of the Test Ban Treaty. As for North Korea, as we know, it launched some sort of missile, we understand, this morning. He said that countries that break the rules should face tough consequences. It was a provocation, he called it, a need for action in the UN and a determination in the international community to stop the spread of weapons. The world, he said, must stand together and give a strong international response. Well, Mr. Obama is just greeting those rapturous crowds in the square. Let's just take a listen to see whether we can hear what's going on there just for the moment. Well, as we've been seeing over the past few days, whether it was in London or whether it was in Strasbourg yesterday at the NATO conference, Mr. Obama still has the magic touch. He charms people wherever he goes, him, of course, and his wife, Michelle. Looks to be tens of thousands in the square by Prague Castle. Let's talk to Dr. Michael Williams. He's joining me in the studio while we watch these pictures of Obama. He's a lecturer in international relations at the University of London, an associate scholar at the Centre for European Policy Analysis in Washington, DC. Thanks for joining us. Ambitious strategy on nuclear weapons.
Well, certainly. I think we've seen a lot of ambition from the president over the last few days at the G20 in terms of setting an economic agenda, at the NATO summit in terms of pushing the alliance forward after 8 years of really lackluster U.S. leadership, and now here on the nuclear issue. And I think he's showing that he's not going to allow a whole host of problems to derail some of the key targets of his campaign, one of which was eliminating nuclear weapons, and he's certainly put the ball in motion here.
Easier said than done, let's face it. He himself said, look, it might not even happen in my lifetime, but when you look at the immediate problems, and not least highlighted by what North Korea did this morning, That's an awful lot to get through. Where do you start?
Well, certainly, and I think he was trying to temper the idealism of the idea. But certainly there's a movement within the U.S. Henry Kissinger wrote about a year ago in an article in the Wall Street Journal about how the U.S. Should support nuclear disarmament across the world. And I think starting with the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty ratification in the U.S. is a good move. He has majorities, or a close majority, in the Senate. He might be able to get that through.
The Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, yeah?
Yes, exactly, which the U.S. has failed to ratify.
And the U.S. hasn't ratified it, but neither has China, neither has India,
a lot of people haven't.
Pakistan.
Yes, but exactly. I think the whole point here is that he's trying to set an example, particularly on the Iran issue in North Korea. And what the U.S. has really done in the last few years is say, no, you can't, but yes, we can, right? Do as I say, not as I do. And he's trying to show that the U.S. is going to establish one sort of rule, that we're going to lead by example. And it makes it easier for him to pressure and keeps his options open, quite frankly, on issues like Iran.
It's very interesting to see just the amount of love and admiration there still is for President Obama and Michelle. Absolutely rapturous crowds here in the Czech Republic capital. One thing that struck me, of course, whenever you hear an American president or a British prime minister, somebody like that, saying that these countries have broken the rules, they shouldn't do this, they shouldn't do that. Of course, countries like Iran and North Korea might turn around and say, well, hang on a minute, you've got all the nuclear weapons, you've got all the testing and things. Why shouldn't we have what you have? And getting over that barrier is going to be pretty difficult. You mentioned Iran, of course.
Exactly, and that's the whole point here, is that the U.S. is saying, look, we're going to reduce our weapons, we're going to talk to Russia, we have more nuclear weapons than anyone else, we're going to lower the cap, this is going to take time, but it makes it much easier for him to say to Iran, look, don't do this. He said they can have peaceful civilian nuclear technology that has been offered in the past. It's not in their interest to pursue this because of an arms race. So he's really trying to lay out an agenda where we can work with the Iranians, also on other issues such as the poppy crop and the opium transportation across the border into Iran. So he's trying to be pragmatic, and I think that pragmatism will work. On the case of North Korea, it's difficult because the North Koreans use the nuclear gambit essentially to keep the regime afloat. I think the Iranians are going to be easier to work with in some ways than North Koreans. North Korea is a major problem that has not succeeded over the last 20 years, really. The Clinton administration failed, the Bush administration tried to isolate North Korea and failed, and we talked about real consequences. The question is, what are those real consequences? And North Korea is a perfect case in point of really not having any consequences for a regime that repeatedly violates international law.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for the moment, Dr. Michael Williams. Steve Rosenberg is our correspondent in Prague. It was quite a wide-ranging speech, but a lot of people hearing this speech, Steve, would say, my goodness, I've got an awful lot of idealism that can never be realised.
Yes, I know. The message, yes, we can, again, came through from President Obama, an incredibly ambitious program to rid the world of nuclear weapons. He made it clear, he wasn't naive, that this could take a long time, possibly wouldn't be achieved, he said, in his lifetime. But he said that America had the moral responsibility, as the only nation to have used a nuclear weapon, to push for a world without nuclear weapons. I thought possibly the most interesting thing about this speech was his reference to the missile defense shield, because many people had been expecting him to announce, possibly several months' time, that the project would be suspended or shelved. He said America would push on with the missile defense shield as long as there was a threat, a danger of a rocket attack from Iran. But if that danger, if that threat was removed, then there would be no need for it.
Indeed, and also talking about Iran there and saying that if Iran is less provocative, then there might not be any need for a missile defense shield.
Yes, exactly. He said America was interested in dialogue, it was interested in engagement with Iran. So once again, this message from the Obama administration that it wants to talk, it prefers dialogue to pressure. But the pressure would be there if the dialogue didn't work. He also mentioned, of course, North Korea. He said North Korea had broken the rules. He said it was vital to make sure that all countries kept to the rules, certainly in terms of nuclear non-proliferation.
Steve Rosenberg in Prague, thank you very much indeed. Well, we leave you now with those pictures of President Obama shaking the hands of a rapturous crowd in Prague. The United States, he said, will take concrete steps towards a world without nuclear missiles. The United States wants a world without nuclear weapons, and we want an effective arsenal to deter any adversary. This is BBC World News, live from London. I'm Owen Thomas, back at the top of the hour.
I'd like to cross over now to Reza Sayah, joining us now from Islamabad with more reaction. First, Reza, let's listen to what President Barack Obama had to say specifically about Iran, because you have covered Iran. You were there just a while ago. So let's listen to this and talk about Pakistan and Iran.
Has yet to build a nuclear weapon. My administration will seek engagement with Iran based on mutual interests and mutual respect. We believe in dialogue. But in that dialogue, we will present a clear choice. We want Iran to take its rightful place in the community of nations, politically and economically. We will support Iran's right to peaceful nuclear energy with rigorous inspections. That's a path that the Islamic Republic can take. Or the government can choose increased isolation, international pressure, and a potential nuclear arms race in the region that will increase insecurity for all. So let me be clear. Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile activity poses a real threat, not just to the United States, but to Iran's neighbors and our allies.
You just heard the president speak about Iran. Interestingly, he said that he supports Iran's right to a peaceful civilian program, nuclear program, under restrictions. What are your thoughts as we hear that? First, talking about Iran.
Well, Iran's government, Relitsa, is very sensitive about any statement that comes out of Washington. Certainly a lot of positives coming from U.S. President Barack Obama's speech, saying that he'd like to engage Iran, saying he'd like dialogue and improve relations. But there's a couple of statements that we can say for certain that Iran's going to react to, and it's not going to be a positive reaction. One of those statements you just heard President Obama saying Iran's nuclear and ballistic activity poses a real threat. President Obama also saying Iran has yet to build a nuclear weapon. These are very suggestive statements suggesting that Iran does indeed have the intention of going after nuclear bombs. And Iran's position all along has been no, that's not the case. Nuclear bombs are against the values of Islam, and we have a peaceful nuclear program, and we have been abiding by the IAEA guidelines, and we're signatory to the nuclear non-proliferation treaty. And they will describe these statements by President Obama as more of the same as what they heard during the Bush administration, accusatory statements. Bottom line, at some point, if indeed these two countries are going to sit across from each other at a table and negotiate, it's going to come down to this nuclear program in Iran. And it's going to come down to the enrichment of uranium. Iran has maintained that this is their right. They will continue to do it. A couple of months ago, they had a test run of their first nuclear facility. In about 6 to 7 months, they say it's going to run. And they say they plan to enrich uranium, and that's their right. The Bush administration in the past had made its position clear. No enrichment of uranium. So it's going to be interesting to see if indeed these two governments sit down after 3 decades of not talking to one another, what's going to be Washington and Mr. Obama's position about uranium enrichment. But a lot of positives in Mr. Obama's speech, but a couple of statements that Iran will certainly describe as accusatory, because this is a government that's very sensitive about any statement that comes from Washington, Relitsa.
Certainly. And your sense from being there, is there a genuine belief that they can do business with Barack Obama?
I think so. I think the Iranian officials that we spoke with say that they're willing. They're willing to talk. They're willing to improve relations. But their position is the ball is in Washington's court. And it's Washington and Mr. Obama that has promised change. And let's see what Mr. Obama's position is. He has yet to make his position clear. The relationship is going to be linked with this nuclear program. So again, at some point they're going to have to sit down, and Iran's position is, let's see what Washington has to offer, and let's see what Washington wants. But clearly from the Iranian officials that we've spoken to, they are ready and willing to sit down and listen, Relitsa.
Reza Sayah, thank you very much. with some thoughts on Iran's possible reaction. He's covered Iran for a long time. He was there just a short while ago. Well, in a few hours, Barack Obama will be departing Prague for Ankara, Turkey. He's then off to Istanbul and will complete this whirlwind maiden European tour, returning to Washington on Tuesday. These are just moments before his speech when he appeared there with the First Lady, Michelle Obama. To a rousing welcome, about 30,000 people gathered there in Prague, the Czech Republic. He will be departing, as I mentioned. His next stop will be Turkey. That will be Mr. Obama's first visit to a predominantly Muslim country as U.S. president. He's already proven he can ease tensions with Turkish leaders. On Saturday, he addressed Turkey's objections to the new NATO chief by guaranteeing Turkish commanders will be a part of the NATO military command. Well, this has been a special presentation of President Barack Obama's very important speech on weapons proliferation, where he reached very high, promising no less than ridding the world of nuclear weapons. He committed his country to that, said that he was not naive, that this would probably not be achieved in his lifetime. But he went back to his slogan from his election campaign, saying, yes, we can. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't set yourself goals and dreams and try to achieve them. The crowd agreed, and that these are, again, pictures from moments ago in Prague. I'm Relitsa Vasilova. Let's go now to programming already in progress. You're watching CNN. All agreed, though, that North Korea's long-range rocket flew over Japan. And now reaction is flying in from across the globe, ranging from calls for calm to pushes for punishment. The UN Security Council will hold an emergency session later today. We have correspondents in key parts of the world on this developing news story. Son Jie has been following these latest developments from Seoul for us. Our senior international correspondent John Voss is in Beijing, looking at what the Chinese government will be doing next. And from Tokyo, Kyung-la has the reaction from Japan. And that is where we begin. A jittery Japan was relieved after the rocket cleared its airspace. But Tokyo says Pyongyang's action is extremely regrettable. Our Kyung-la is joining us live from Japan's capital with reaction. Kyung, must be a huge sense of relief, but also resolve from the government there to take action.
Certainly now we saw Japan's government immediately moving diplomatically to try to get some action related, as you are indicating. What they really wanted and they got was that emergency session of the UN Security Council. That is what all eyes here in Japan are on, as that will be convening later this afternoon in as far as Eastern time. Here in Japan, the sense is that what this has meant, according to Japan's government, is that even though things went off without a hitch, even though nothing on Japanese soil was hit, what this means for the stability of the region is that this gave North Korea the ability to build on their knowledge, to keep building their technology for a ballistic missile program. That's a belief from Japan. So what we saw today throughout the day is a flurry of activity from the Prime Minister's office, meeting with his cabinet, calls between here and Washington, D.C. They want to create a very strong statement out of that meeting this afternoon. This is from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, saying what they're seeking later this afternoon in that Security Council meeting is some sort of strong statement saying that this is unacceptable, that Japan absolutely feels that this is destabilizing the region, Relitsa.
And Kyung, what about the people of Japan? This was a huge shock to them, the fact that there would be this rocket flying over them and not known if it would be successful or not. This must have been very frightening for people.
Certainly this was alarming on a couple of different fronts for people watching television all this week. First, the rhetoric. The rhetoric was extremely strong coming out of North Korea and also coming out of Japan. And the second thing that was alarming was seeing all that military action on the ground here in Japan. This is a country that has a pacifist constitution. So seeing those PAC-3 Patriot missiles being poised in 3 areas of Tokyo and also a couple of positions on Japan's northern shore, and seeing the destroyers being dispatched, 2 in the Sea of Japan, 1 in the Pacific Ocean. Seeing all this exercise on the ground was very alarming to people as they watched the news. But today, none of that had to be activated. Any part of a falling object hitting Japanese soil, that did not happen. So none of that military exercise that built up today had to actively be engaged at all.
Young Tokyo, thank you. To China now. China is calling for a calm and peaceful response from the international community. Senior international correspondent John Voss is in Beijing with more now on the reaction from North Korea's strongest ally.
Unlike the United States, Japan and South Korea, China does not directly criticize North Korea, simply noting that the North Koreans say they launched a satellite. The Chinese don't speculate on what it may or may not have been, and there's no talk of provocative or dangerous acts. No mention of any consequences. Instead, Beijing calls on all countries to remain calm and to try and resolve this through, quote, appropriate means. Also calling on all countries to try and keep the peace and stability of the region. The lukewarm response from Beijing is not unexpected. The Chinese are in fact the North Koreans' biggest and most important ally. And in the past, China has provided diplomatic cover for North Korea in the UN Security Council. Judging by this reaction today, that will most likely happen again when the UN Security Council holds an emergency meeting on Sunday. Analysts believe China is much more concerned about North Korea's nuclear program, and there are fears in Beijing that any international sanctions as a result of this rocket launch could further complicate those already stalled nuclear negotiations, the so-called six-party talks. John Voss, CNN Beijing.
South Korea says Pyongyang has threatened world peace, and it will likely seek sanctions against its northern neighbor. Son Jie is monitoring developments from Seoul for us. She joins us now live. Jie, the reaction, what is Seoul hoping to accomplish at the United Nations?
Well, South Korea's reaction has been a lot more hardline than Beijing's reaction. South Korea actually was one of the first to confirm that North Korea actually fired this rocket. It had strongly condemned the North Korea's firing. The South Korean president, Lee Myung-bak, holding a National Security Council meeting even before the launch happened. Right after the launch, the head of the National Security Council meeting had a statement saying that it was a disappointment, that South Korea was deeply disappointed. Now, South Korea considers this a clear violation of the UN Security Council resolution, and that they have said before that they are going to take this to the UN Security Council. Although South Korea has stopped from saying that it would call for a UN sanction against North Korea. South Korea wants North Korea to know that South Korea and the rest of the world is not happy with North Korea, but it does not want to push North Korea too far. There is that issue of the six-party talks. There is that issue of the the international community trying to get North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons. So in the large picture, that for South Korea may be the more important issue at hand. So South Korea being very angry, but keeping it in some sort of check, Relitza.
Jie, is there a sense of frustration that it seems like everything has been tried with North Korea, and so far nothing has really worked? It's been one step forward, 2 steps backwards. Sanctions have been tried, diplomacy, sunshine policy, a tougher approach from the current leadership of South Korea.
Definitely. I mean, that's very much the theme of the North Korean policy for most anyone dealing with North Korea. It's a frustration. I mean, you would talk to Christopher Hill, his predecessors. Anyone that has dealt with North Korea will tell you that it is a difficult process getting North Korea to agree to anything, and you always have to be prepared to take that step back. South Korea is no stranger to this as well. But South Korea knows that with North Korea, it is always best to be talking, to be at the negotiating table, to try to get North Korea to open up to the rest of the world. That was what the Sunshine Policy was all about. Even though this administration is more hardline, they do not do away with the fact that talking to North Korea is always a better option. Relisa.
Son Jie in Seoul, thank you. We will also have extensive coverage on our website. There you will find video reports from our correspondents as well as a map of the flight path of this rocket. We've made it easy for you to access. Just go to cnn.com/Korea and the international community. Our Christy Lou Stout talked with Mike Chenoy. He is now at the Pacific Council on International Policy. Before that, he was CNN senior Asia correspondent who had traveled to North Korea 14 times.
The Obama administration is going to have to find a way to reach out to North Korea. They're either going to have to send an envoy or the president's going to have to make a statement. They're going to have to do something. The political challenge for Obama is the optics of this are going to look like North Korea flexes its muscles and the U.S. comes back to the table on North Korean terms. The reality is, I think it's in the long-range interest of the United States to go back to the table. But the North Koreans know this, and part of the reason they've played this the way they have is precisely create the sense that they've got the leverage and they've got the power. But in the end, the big picture isn't going to get sorted out unless you've got negotiations underway.
Now, we have a new administration. We also have a new North Korean envoy, this Stephen Bosworth. What's the inside scoop on him and how he's likely to engage the North Koreans?
Steve Bosworth is a very smart guy. He was the U.S. ambassador in South Korea. He has vast experience with North Korea. He was in North Korea just a couple of weeks before he was named to this position. He knows how they think. He understands, I think, that negotiations are the only way to go. It was interesting in his comments right before the launch. He went out of his way to offer to go back to Pyongyang. The challenge for the Obama administration is to kind of walk a tightrope here to make the requisite tough noises, particularly given how hardline the Japanese and the South Koreans want to be, but to not close the door on negotiations. The only way the North Koreans have ever given anything up, to the extent they have, has been in a diplomatic process, and so they've got to find a way to get that going again.
Of all the parties involved in the UN Security Council and the six-party framework, who has the most leverage? I mean, there's been a lot said about China, but does China really have the most leverage?
The North Koreans have the most leverage right now. It's amazing. You have to give the North Koreans tremendous credit just for their political skill. They've got these enormous powers right next to them, China, Japan, you got the U.S., South Korea, and the North Koreans are driving events. There's a conventional view that the Chinese have the most leverage, that most of North Korea's trade, most of its aid, most of its food, most of its fuel goes through China. But Beijing has made very clear over many years now that it is not going to take steps to bring North Korea to its knees. It is more concerned about instability in North Korea than whether Kim Jong-il has 4 or 5 nukes tucked in a cave somewhere, especially with Kim Jong-il's health question marks. The Chinese are not going to do things that they see as destabilizing North Korea. So the notion that the Chinese can be relied on to bring the North Koreans around doesn't fly. The Chinese position is get down to negotiations and try and work out a deal and manage tensions in the interim.
Okay, and bottom line, Mike, I mean, you are the person to ask because you've traveled to North Korea 14 times, you've reported on North Korea extensively. What does North Korea want?
The North Koreans are interested in regime survival above and beyond anything else. And they have felt for 15, almost 20 years now, that the way to ensure the security of their regime is through an accommodation with the United States under which the U.S. as the world's remaining superpower legitimizes them, recognizes them, guarantees their security. The missiles and nukes have been seen both as deterrents in case the U.S. or any of its allies wanted to get tough, and also as bargaining chips. What has changed now in the wake of the North's 2006 nuclear test is whether the North Koreans have now decided they're not going to give up their nuclear capability, and they are signaling that they want to be treated as a nuclear power.
18:45 Uhr, hier sind die RTL-Nachrichten. Yes, we can. Bei seiner Rede in Prag ruft US-Präsident Barack Obama die Welt auf, alle Atomwaffen abzuschaffen. Das sind leider die falschen Bilder. Außerdem... Na, kommen Sie noch? Nein, Sie kommen nicht mehr. Das bitten wir zu entschuldigen, liebe Zuschauer. Trotzdem herzlich willkommen zu unseren Nachrichten hier bei RTL. Die sportlichen Ereignisse des Tages, die hat Andreas Fontin gleich für Sie.
Ja, und wir haben natürlich das verrückte Rennen von Malaysia im Angebot. Schauen Sie gleich rein. Guten Abend.
Ganz genau. Ja, solche Worte aus dem Mund eines US-Präsidenten hätte vor wenigen Monaten kaum jemand für möglich gehalten. Bei seiner Rede in Prag forderte Barack Obama am Morgen die Staaten der Welt auf, alle atomaren Waffenlager abzubauen. Und die USA wollen dabei die Führung übernehmen. Nur Stunden zuvor hatte Nordkorea mit dem Test einer Langstreckenrakete weltweit für Empörung gesorgt. Denn damit könnten auch Atomwaffen transportiert werden. Susanne Ungrad mit Einzelheiten.
We have to insist. Yes, we can.
Da war er wieder, Obamas Leitspruch. Ja, wir können es, doch diesmal ging es nicht um seinen Wahlerfolg. Er spricht sich auf seiner Prager Rede als US-Präsident für den Abbau von Atomwaffen aus. Ich möchte heute also ganz deutlich und mit der Überzeugung Amerikas Bereitschaft erklären, den Frieden und die Sicherheit in einer Welt ohne Atomwaffen anzustreben. 20.000 jubeln Obama bereits bei seiner Ankunft mit Ehefrau Michelle auf dem historischen Platz vor dem Hradschin in der Prager Burg zu. Politik-Popstar einerseits, doch Begeisterung auch über seine Abrüstungspläne. Obama spricht von moralischer Verpflichtung als einzige Weltmacht, die schon eine Atomwaffe eingesetzt hat, zu handeln. Er kündigt konkret einen weltweiten Gipfel zum Nuklearwaffenabbau im nächsten Jahr an. Amerika will seine Arsenale verringern, aber ausdrücklich nicht darauf verzichten, solange andere Staaten Atomraketen einsetzen.
Amerikaner und Russen müssen nun aber mit gutem Beispiel vorangehen, denn in ihren Arsenalen lagern noch tausende Atomsprengköpfe. Mit dem russischen Präsidenten Medwedew hat Obama erste Schritte zur Reduzierung vereinbart.
Während Obama für seine atomwaffenfreien Visionen wirbt, schürt Nordkorea mit einem Raketenstart heute neue Ängste. Über Japan abgeschossen sollte die Langstreckenrakete angeblich einen Satelliten ins Weltall bringen. Der Großteil der Rakete stürzte jedoch in den Pazifik.
Wir haben einhellig den Raketentest heute der Koreaner verurteilt und gesagt, dass dies eine Verletzung auch der internationalen Regeln ist. Das muss im UN-Sicherheitsrat heute noch geahndet werden.
Einigkeit herrschte auch beim EU-USA-Gipfel über Obamas Abrüstungspläne. Begrüßt wurde sein Vorhaben, Amerika stärker in den Klimaschutz einzubinden. Konkrete Ergebnisse brachte der Gipfel nicht. Er sollte eher wieder neuen Schwung in die Beziehungen bringen. Beim tschechischen Volk kam der Schwung Obamas jedenfalls wieder mal voll an.
Nach den schweren Krawallen während des NATO-Gipfels gestern in Straßburg werden nun die Spuren der Verwüstung beseitigt. Bis in die Morgenstunden drang Qualm aus dem völlig ausgebrannten Hotel in der Nähe der Europabrücke. Angeblich hatten Chaoten aus dem Gebäude Polizeiwaffen gestohlen, die dort lagerten. Unter den festgenommenen Gewalttätern waren auch viele Deutsche. 3 von ihnen sollen bereits morgen in einem Schnellverfahren verurteilt werden. 20 Menschen wurden bei den Krawallen leicht verletzt. Wie hoch der Schaden ist, wird sich erst in den nächsten Tagen zeigen.
Die Nachrichten des Tages. Heute mit Steffen Seibert.
Meine Damen und Herren, guten Abend. Hier sind unsere Themen. US-Präsident Obama stellt in Prag konkrete Schritte zur atomaren Abrüstung vor. Mit dem Start einer Langstreckenrakete löst Nordkorea weltweit Proteste aus. Und bei der Turn-EM holt sich Fabian Hambüchen sein zweites Gold. Barack Obama ist nicht der Erste, der von einer Welt ohne Atomwaffen spricht. Aber heute in Prag hat er sich an die Spitze all derer gestellt, die für dieses Ziel arbeiten wollen. In einem triumphalen Auftritt vor Zehntausenden legte er dar, wie die Abrüstung konkret vorangebracht und das Risiko, dass Atomwaffen in Schurkenhände fallen, verringert werden soll. Bundeskanzlerin Merkel nannte Obamas Rede ein wichtiges Signal.
US-Präsident Barack Obama kämpfte bei seinem Auftritt in Prag für eine Welt ohne Atomwaffen. Vor dem EU-USA-Gipfel zog er 30.000 Menschen in seinen Bann. Er formulierte die Sehnsüchte der Europäer und ermutigte sie, an Abrüstung zu glauben. Ich möchte heute ganz deutlich und mit Überzeugung Amerikas Bereitschaft erklären, den Frieden und die Sicherheit in einer Welt ohne Atomwaffen anzustreben. Ich bin nicht naiv. Dieses Ziel wird sich nicht rasch erreichen lassen. Aber wir müssen darauf bestehen, wir können es schaffen. Der Inhalt der Abrüstungsinitiative, der Stopp aller Atomtests auch in den USA, eine Konferenz zur Nuklearsicherheit, ein Vertrag zur Raketenreduzierung noch in diesem Jahr zwischen den USA und Russland. Außerdem soll Nuklearmaterial nur in sichere Hände gegeben werden. Präsident Medvedev und ich haben diesen Prozess in London eingeleitet. Bis zum Ende des Jahres streben wir ein Abkommen an. Das soll rechtsverbindlich und mutig sein. Wir werden alle Nuklearmächte an dieser Anstrengung beteiligen. Die EU begrüßte die Pläne. Kanzlerin Merkel meinte, der US-Präsident formuliere ja nicht nur vage Ziele, sondern setze bereits Termine für die sogenannten Startverhandlungen zur Abrüstung von Raketen.
Die Einberufung einer Konferenz und die direkten Verhandlungen mit Russland über Start 1 sind für mich zwei ganz wichtige Schritte, die auch für Kurzfristziele machbar und schaffbar sind. Und deshalb sehe ich diese Rede als ein wichtiges Signal an.
Ein weiteres wichtiges Signal des Gipfels: Die Beziehungen zwischen der EU und den USA haben durch Barack Obama einen neuen Schub bekommen.
Die USA und Russland besitzen zusammen 90% aller Atomwaffen. Roland Strumpf in Moskau. Obama wird also russische Unterstützung brauchen. Meint Moskau es genauso ernst?
Offizielle Reaktionen gibt es noch nicht aus Moskau, aber ich denke, der Kreml wird sich schwer tun mit Obamas Vorschlägen. Denn Russlands eigentliches Drohpotenzial sind ja die Atomwaffen. Der Rest der Armee ist in einem eher jammervollen Zustand. In einer Welt ohne Atomwaffen blieben die konventionellen Streitkräfte. Das hieß für Washington eine sehr starke konventionelle Armee, für Russland eine schwache, veraltete, nicht mehr sehr einsatzfähige Armee. Deshalb tut sich der Kreml recht schwer mit diesen Vorschlägen und sie treffen hier auf einigermaßen Skepsis.
Vielen Dank nach Moskau. Mehr zu Obamas Abrüstungsinitiative im Internet unter heute.de. Weitere Reaktionen auch gleich nach unserer Sendung in Berlin direkt. Barack Obama wurde heute um 4:30 Uhr in der Früh geweckt, weil Nordkoreas Machthaber Kim Jong-il seine Ankündigung wahrgemacht und eine Rakete hatte starten lassen. Angeblich mit einem Satelliten bestückt. Südkorea, Japan und die USA befürchten aber, dieses Projekt könnte auch Teil eines Waffenentwicklungsprogramms sein. Nun hat der UN-Sicherheitsrat eine Sondersitzung einberufen.
Nordkoreas Staatsfernsehen vermeldet heute einen großen Erfolg. Wissenschaftler haben einen experimentellen Satelliten mit einer Trägerrakete in den Orbit geschossen, so der Moderator. Der Satellit sende von seiner Umlaufbahn Messdaten und revolutionäre Lieder. Die Raketenabschussstation von oben, ein Satellitenfoto, mehr gibt es nicht. Doch laut USA und Südkorea ist von hier aus nichts im Weltraum angekommen. Die Langstreckenrakete sei über Japan hinweggeflogen, ein Teil ins japanische Meer gestürzt, der Rest in den Pazifik. Dennoch, die Nervosität ist groß, nicht nur in Japan, wo mitten in Tokio vorsorglich Luftabwehrraketen in Stellung gebracht worden waren. Weltweit wird befürchtet, dass Nordkorea in Wahrheit, wie auf diesem Archivbild, militärische Technik für eine Langstreckenrakete testen wollte. Das ist eine extreme Provokation, so Japans Ministerpräsident. Dass Nordkorea trotz weltweiter Warnungen eine Rakete abfeuert, können wir nicht hinnehmen. Die USA sehen einen klaren Verstoß gegen die Resolution des UN-Sicherheitsrates, die dem kommunistischen Land solche Tests verbietet. Nordkorea hat wieder Regeln gebrochen. Regeln müssen bindend sein. Wer sie verletzt, muss bestraft werden. Wir brauchen eine starke internationale Antwort darauf. Der UN-Sicherheitsrat berät noch heute in New York über die Lage. China und Russland haben aber bereits klargestellt, dass sie neuen Sanktionen gegen Nordkorea nicht zustimmen werden.
In Japan war die Nervosität am größten. Die angekündigte Rakete flog über die Köpfe der Menschen hinweg, wenn auch weit entfernt und nicht sichtbar. Die erste Stufe stürzte ins japanische Meer, der Rest kurze Zeit später in den Pazifik, auch dort ohne Schaden anzurichten. Die schon vor Tagen in Position gebrachten Abwehrraketen konnten daher am Boden bleiben. In Nordkorea verkündet unterdessen die Propagandaabteilung feierlich den ersten eigenen Satelliten im Weltall. Angeblich sendet er nicht nur Messdaten, sondern auch Revolutionslieder über Machthaber Kim Jong-il. Dass im All vermutlich gar nichts angekommen ist, wie die USA und Südkorea sagen, erfahren die Nordkoreaner nicht. Auch nicht, dass der verarmte Staat hunderte Millionen US-Dollar für Raketen ausgibt, statt die Bevölkerung zu ernähren. Proteste in Südkorea. In dem angeblichen Satellitenstaat sehen viele auch hier nur einen Deckmantel für den Test einer militärischen Langstreckenrakete. Niemand nimmt Nordkorea das plötzliche Interesse an der Weltraumforschung ab. Stattdessen überall Bitterkeit und Sorge, dass die Sicherheit in der Region nun gefährdet sein könnte. Wir und die internationale Gemeinschaft sind enttäuscht, dass Nordkorea die Langstreckenrakete getestet hat. Mit dem Geld hätte das Land auch seine chronische Nahrungsmittelkrise lösen können. Eine Langstreckenrakete fehlte Kim Jong-il noch im Arsenal. Er hat bereits verschiedene Reichweiten und verdient durch den Verkauf an Staaten im Nahen Osten. Noch fehlt wohl die Technologie, Raketen mit Nuklearsprengköpfen zu bestücken, aber es wird sicher daran gearbeitet. Auch deshalb kommt auf Bitte Japans der Weltsicherheitsrat in New York zusammen. Es soll ein entschiedenes Vorgehen geben, denn Japan fühlt sich bedroht. Aber auch von Sanktionen hat sich Nordkorea in der Vergangenheit nicht beeinflussen lassen. Der Diktator lässt sich bei einer Theaterinspektion fotografieren. Der Raketenstart sollte wohl auch zeigen, dass Kim Jong-il trotz gesundheitlicher Probleme weiter alle Macht im Land fest in den Händen hält.
Langstreckenrakete hat sich in der Nacht der UN-Sicherheitsrat getroffen. Bislang herrscht in dem Gremium aber Uneinigkeit über ein gemeinsames Vorgehen. Die USA und Japan streben eine deutliche Resolution an, die den Raketenstart verurteilt. Russland und China dagegen waren zurückhaltend. Die Beratungen sollen heute weitergehen.
Hat von der internationalen Raumstation wieder abgedockt. Am Vormittag soll sie in der kasachischen Steppe landen, wegen schlechten Wetters allerdings einen Tag später als geplant. Nach der Wachablösung auf der ISS kehren nun 2 Astronauten und der Weltraumtourist Simoni zur Erde zurück. Für den Milliardär war es schon der 2. Besuch im All.
It's time to start up our farewell ceremony. And today, April 8th, because it's. And Michael, your words.
Thank you, Gennady Ivanich. A few days ago, we handed over the space station to you and your crew. And now today, Koichi starts working with you on Expedition 19. So I'd like to start out by saying thanks to Koichi-san.
Thank you very much, Mike.
For your hard work on Expedition 18. We were glad to have you part of our crew. And it was a pleasure in my life to have a chance to fly with you. So now you have your crew of Expedition 19. Myself and Yuri are the last remainders of Expedition 18. And we're going back in the Soyuz, and we're thanking Russia very much for the Soyuz. It's a great, reliable transport vehicle up and down. Along with us, of course, we have Dr. Simoni, who's coming with us as a member of our crew. And we've all gotten to know each other very well over the past couple days, and it's going to be an interesting and fun ride back. Nonetheless, past 6 months, Yuri Valentinich, I want to say thank you. You're awesome. You're amazing. We did so many things together. First, we launched on the Soyuz together, 2 spacewalks. We got everything ready along with Greg. Remember Greg? That was a long time ago. And Sandy, and now Koichi. We were a great team. And you always reminded us, it's not an individual, it's the equipage, it's the crew. And Yuri, it was a pleasure to serve with you. You're like my brother. I don't even know if you're even older than me. Maybe you're like my same-size brother, twin. Thank you for your hard work, and I'd like to say thanks, of course, to Greg and Sandy, who have already made it home. Wish us luck. But we couldn't have done it by ourselves. You all know the team's on the ground, and I think the coolest thing in my life, outside of being married to a beautiful woman and having 3 kids, is to work with the international partners, all of us, you know, United States, Canada, European Space Agency, Japan, and of course Russia. We do everything together. We're humanity's bright hope for the future. So we're handing you over a station with all that. The pressure's on, guys. We stood on the shoulders of Expedition 17, who stood on the shoulders before them. Yeah, we'll try to give you as broad of shoulders for you to stand on. And good luck to you. And thank you to our teams on the ground. You guys are amazing. And continue to take care of these guys as well as you took care of us. There's no way they can fail. Here's Yuri.
Okay, we were together 6 months. It was great work together, and right now next crew, Expedition 19. Okay, my friend, good luck, and I appreciate to everybody in the ground to the great job. Okay, guys, thank you very much, and see you in the ground.
Charles?
Well, from where I stand, I think humanity got a wonderful space station in the International Space Station, and maybe the only thing that is more remarkable than the size and the effectiveness of this space vehicle is the people serving on board of the station. In my past, I've been associated and participated in a number of organizations with stress on excellence, and I have to say that the quality and the dedication of the people, especially on the station, but also on the ground, and the people who support the activities is remarkable, and it's a good omen for the future. It was a difficult decision for me to fly for the second time, and now looking back, I'm so glad that I've done it. It's I could accomplish so much more with the experience that I had. I probably did more than twice as much photography, a more complicated experiment, and talk to ham operators all over the world, and large number of, well, reasonable number of schools where school kids could be inspired to learn science, engineering, and mathematics. So it was a great trip. Thank you, everyone, and I'm looking forward to get home and to my wife. But it was a fantastic trip. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike Fink, Colonel Fink, for your unbelievable speech. Thank you very much, guys, for leaving space station a great, safe condition for us. And we're ready to accept space station command, and we're ready to continue our research and to prepare space station for 6-person crew. And honestly, we'll be missing you, and you'll be always in our hearts, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you again as soon as possible, but not earlier than in 6 months. Thank you, guys. Anybody else?
Well, of the 6 people here, I'm the only new person, the only first-time flyer, and I want to say thank you to everybody here for making me feel welcome and helping me learn everything about zero gravity and how the station works, and especially for the 18 crew, for Yuri and Mike and the other 18 crew members who aren't here, Greg Shamatov, Sandy Magnus, and of course Koichi, who is here. The station is in great shape, and there's so much to learn, and it's quite overwhelming, but the handover has been tremendous. And as we say goodbye to these guys, I want to remember that we've had 12 days of 6-person crew, and it's just it's been crazy, it's been wild, it's been a steep learning curve, but amidst all that, we've had time to share stories and had great times around the galley table, and we're going to miss you guys like crazy. So thank you guys so much for putting the station in such great shape, and for your friendship and fellowship.
Okay, Mike, Yuri, and the Expedition 18 crew members, I am just glad that I could join you on the station during Expedition 18. I learned a lot, and thank you very much for a wonderful handover. And well, congratulations to y'all. And you're really the can-do crew. And you got us ready for the 6 crew member stage of the International Space Station. And congratulations on your 200% success of the utilization and the payload operation. You did the wonderful work. And Charles, I learned a lot from you, and thank you for giving me this very interesting new perspective in space flight. And I wish you the best for the landing and post-flight. And to you guys, safe landing. I'll see you in several months. Thank you very much.
Houston, farewell ceremony is over, and let us embrace each other.
All the way, man. So forgive me for all the things I haven't done. How can you get in trouble for not doing anything?
Hey, Charles, let's go get your kintama rod right now.
And this is Mission Control Houston. That concluded the formal farewell ceremonies inside the International Space Station. And we're now watching some follow-up video from the International Space Station. This is a view of Charles Simonyi as he gets into the Soyuz with his commander. Of the ride uphill, Gennady Padalka. Simonyi rode up to the International Space Station with Padalka, Mike Barrett, about a week ago, and is preparing to ride home to the Earth aboard the same Soyuz that Mike Fink and Yuri Lonchkov rode up to orbit 6 months ago on. Mike Fink entering into the transfer compartment of the Zarya control module to begin his ingress into the Soyuz spacecraft. He'll be the flight engineer for the landing, with Yuri Lonchkov, the commander for the Soyuz. Padalka and Simonyi bidding each other goodbye. Lonchkov there on the left. Already wearing the communications cap that provides audio and video, audio communication with the ground through the Soyuz comm systems. And there's Mike Fink saying goodbye to Koichi Wakata, who will be staying on board the International Space Station to continue on with Expedition 19 and then later join Expedition 20 with the arrival of Roman Romanenko, Frank Davina, and Bob Thirsk for the first 6-person crew aboard the space station later this summer. Air Force Colonel Mike Fink waving goodbye to the camera. Again, this is replayed video from the informal farewell ceremonies that occurred earlier this evening about 7:30 p.m. Central Time.
Selected. Mission Control Moscow at 3:50. The recording is activated.
And we're back now with live coverage of tonight's undocking of the Soyuz TMA-13 spacecraft from the Zarya control module's docking port on the International Space Station. Undocking command scheduled to be issued at 10:52 p.m. Central Time.
0641:30 in work. Undocking, veer out.
The hooks that connect the Soyuz spacecraft to the International Space Station docking port will be driven open. Springs will impart about 0.12 meters per second velocity to the Soyuz spacecraft, pushing it gently away from the International Space Station, with physical separation of the spacecraft from the space station occurring at 10:55 p.m. Central. Again, all this to set up for a targeted landing on the steppes of Kazakhstan at 2:16 a.m. Central Time on April the 8th. Again, today's landing site has been moved a bit to the southeast of the normal location near Arkalyk to Jezgazgan, and delayed by 1 day because of soggy conditions at the usual landing site area.
Monitor the hooks. We have indicator mode on the station. We'll give you a go. This is 19.1 for opening the hooks. Copy. Opening the hooks. Correct. During undocking, monitor the interface, the docking interface, to make sure there is no interference. Titan 65230 issued command for opening the hooks. Yuri, how do you read me? Loud and clear. So you checked to make sure there is nothing interfering with the separation, with undocking. Correct. We are monitoring format 44.
This is Ms. Troll Houston with some more additional live television views. This is from the targeting camera on the docking system from the Soyuz spacecraft as it remains attached to the Zarya control module transfer compartment docking port.
Link 070020. Chaika startup is expected, and 0340 and the next command, and this is ODR for deactivation of Chaika. For your reference only, ODR will be issued by the ground only. There is no need to do it for you. Copy. Start the timer to monitor the cyclogram of undocking. One indicator is off, 65140.
Есть
651
25, есть режим ассоциации выполнен.
25.
Отход от станции.
Watching back out.
Наблюдаю стыковочно.
Looking at the docking node. Docking node is clear.
Moscow flight controllers have confirmed to Flight Director Bob Dempsey here in the Houston Mission Control Center a successful undocking of the Soyuz spacecraft from the International Space Station. Undocking occurring as scheduled at 10:55 p.m. Central Time. Commands to drive the hooks that hold the Soyuz to the docking port. Uplinked by the folks at the Mission Control Center in Kharlov outside of Moscow at 10:52 p.m. Central. And again, physical separation occurring at 10:55.
Will be selected.
live television views as the Soyuz spacecraft backs away from the transfer compartment docking port.
Copy.
Expedition 18 Commander Mike Fink,
Bye-bye station.
Soyuz Commander Yuri Lonchikov, and spaceflight participant Charles Simonier in the Soyuz spacecraft departing the space station.
All the best, Gennady. All the best to you. We are already missing you. Very, very smooth back out. All the best, guys. Good luck. Koichi and Mike, bye-bye. Thank you for your work. Koichi and Michael, all the best. All the best, guys. Is mine silent? No, she said. She said goodbye to you. Mission Control Moscow, 6127, depot activation. And deactivation, monitoring deactivation of depot. 65840. Depot indicator is off. Copy. Issuing ODR via command link.
The first separation burn of the Soyuz spacecraft to begin its movement away from the International Space Station occurring at 10:58 p.m. Central Time. That's separation burn number 1, 15 seconds in duration, and imparting about just under 1 meter per second velocity to the Soyuz to back it away from the International Space Station. This view from the docking camera on the Soyuz should give us an excellent view of the full power configuration of the International Space Station, the first since Discovery departed and performed a fly around. All 4 sets of solar arrays will be in frame here as the Soyuz docks away, pulls away.
20 ODR 707. This is for FYI only. Okay, thank you. After undock, you are go to unpress the key and then operate on the push to talk. And a reminder, at 7:20, don't forget to activate the accelerometer. Copy 0720, activate accelerometer.
Space station will begin maneuvering back into the normal orientation or attitude relative to the Earth and its travel around the planet below. Using Russian thrusters to perform that maneuver. About 25 minutes after midnight Central Time, the control of the orientation will be handed back over to the motion control system and the control moment gyroscopes on the American side of the International Space Station. About an hour later, the Soyuz will fire its engines and the do orbit burn to begin the descent.
Titans, Moscow. Go ahead. You're about to see descent indication come on. This means you will not have to manually activate it. It will stay on. Okay, copy. Titans. Our next VHF pass at 0719. But we will also have S-band, so we'll continue talking to you on the S-band. How copy? Copy that. Titans, Moscow. Go ahead, Volodya.
Titans, Mission Control, Moscow, how do you read?
This is Mission Control Houston, now 20 minutes out from a planned touchdown of the Soyuz spacecraft on the steppes of Kazakhstan. We're standing down for the start of the entry guidance sequence of the re-entry at 1:54 a.m. Central Time. Flight controllers at the Mission Control Center in Krylov outside of Moscow calling the spacecraft, standing by to regain communications with the Soyuz and its crew. This is Mission Control Houston, 17 minutes out from predicted landing on the steppes of Kazakhstan near Kazakhstan.
We're copying you. What is the time like? 6 seconds. How are you guys feeling? Feeling excellent. Pressure in descent module. G loads are 3.8. Copy. Everything is nominal. G loads alleviating 3.5. Copy. G load 2.96. Copy. 2.6, route 4.
This is Mission Control Houston, back in communication with the Soyuz and the crew commander of the Soyuz, Yuri Lonchkov, Expedition 18 commander and flight engineer Mike Fink, and spaceflight participant Charles Simonier continuing their descent through the Earth's atmosphere, having passed already through the maximum G-load period just about a minute ago. We're just over 15 minutes from touchdown at the landing site in Kazakhstan.
We didn't have comms, so we didn't know how to go. Yes, I was providing commentary, but unfortunately you didn't hear it. Okay, G-loads are inaudible.
At the landing site in Kazakhstan, temperature expected to be about 48 degrees Fahrenheit around the time of the landing. This is Mission Control Houston, now 14 minutes from touchdown as planned at 2:16 a.m. Central Time near Zhezkazgan, Kazakhstan. Commander Yuri Lonchkov and his flight engineer for this descent, Mike Fink, and commander for the Expedition 18 mission, joined by spaceflight participant Charles Simonier aboard the Soyuz. Landing schedule for 2:16 a.m. Central Time. Or 1:16 p.m. Kazakh time. All systems working well aboard the Soyuz spacecraft as it proceeds through the Earth's atmosphere. Clear skies and temperatures about 48 degrees Fahrenheit expected at the landing site, which is a bit farther southeast of the normal landing zone near Arkelik. Moved there, and a day later, to avoid some less than favorable conditions at the landing area. Ground conditions had become soggy after recent precipitation in the area. Teams of support workers heading in helicopters to the landing site area. Among them, the International Space Station Program Manager Mike Sefredini, Joel Montalbano, one of the leaders of the NASA team that supports activities in Russia in support of the International Space Station. Chief astronaut Steve Lindsay also aboard one of the helicopters heading for the landing site, as well as Steve Hart, the flight surgeon who will help support Mike Fink as he climbs out of the spacecraft and begins to get his Earth leg back after 6 months on orbit.
Houston Station, go ahead on spacecraft 1.
Yeah, Koichi, the SAR forces report a good visual and shoots, and we should have video coming up again in just a few moments.
Parachutes from the Soyuz spacecraft opening, beginning the preliminary slowing of the spacecraft. The search and rescue teams report they can see the spacecraft and the chutes opening over the landing site. Spacecraft communicator Mark Reagan reporting that to the crew aboard the International Space Station, who are carefully following the descent of their colleagues.
Station Moscow, SG-1 for Gennady.
T-minus 10 minutes to touchdown.
Go ahead.
Visiting vehicle officer here in Mission Control reporting to Flight Director Royce Renfrew that the heat shield should be separating from the Soyuz spacecraft at this time, freeing up the retro rockets that will provide the final softening of the landing for the Soyuz spacecraft. Now 7 minutes 45 seconds to touchdown.
Happy mood. Static. Yes, this was a good thing. All the best to you, and say hi to Michael. We soon will be having a DPC. Inaudible. Oh, that inaudible. You will need to report the parameters for some hardware. Okay. So we'll talk to you soon. We'll reconfigure back to nominal in a few minutes, and it will be back to nominal ops. All right, I'm starting on this on my end.
Now 5 minutes to touchdown of the Soyuz carrying the Expedition 18 crew and Charles Simonyi back to Earth. The Expedition 18 crew wrapping up 6 months on orbit. Simonyi wrapping up 2 weeks on orbit. Landing schedule for 2:16 a.m. Central Time near Jezkazgan, Kazakhstan. Again, temperatures there expected to be about 48 degrees with clear skies. Helicopters with support teams from the search and rescue crews that will be looking for the precise location of the Soyuz as it descends on its parachutes. Those parachutes reported to have opened and be functioning well in their function to slow the spacecraft. NASA and Russian officials aboard those helicopters ready to support the crew. Flight Surgeon Steve Hart will be there to take care of Expedition 18 Commander Mike Fink. Russian doctors also available there to take care of Yuri Lanchikov and Charles Simonyi.
Inaudible.
International Space Station Program Manager Mike Seferdini, along with Joel Montalbano of the support team for NASA in Moscow. And Steve Lindsay, the chief astronaut, also joining them aboard the helicopters, moving into position, as well as public affairs representatives who'll be there to document in photo activities of the arrival of the crew back on Earth.
Inaudible. Inaudible.
As the Soyuz spacecraft continues on its descent to Kazakhstan, the International Space Station continues on its orbit, 220 statute miles over Japan, one of the international partners for the joint effort of the International Space Station. The Expedition 19 crew receiving television signals uplink from here in Mission Control so they can follow along with their colleagues' descent. 2 minutes and 30 seconds to landing. Current altitude reported to be about 1,500 meters above the surface of the planet. The Soyuz Crew members reporting they're in good spirits and ready for landing. Those words being relayed over to the flight director by the visiting vehicle officer here in Mission Control. And reports coming in now from the search and rescue team in the vicinity of the landing site, reporting that they can see the capsule suspended beneath its parachute as it continues its descent. T-minus 30 seconds to landing. Visiting vehicle officer confirms touchdown. Touchdown of the 17 Soyuz carrying Expedition 18 Commander Mike Fink, Soyuz Commander and Flight Engineer for Expedition 18 Yuri Lonchikov, and spaceflight participant Charles Simonyi, all touching down at the landing site near Zhezkazgan, Kazakhstan. Again, this was the first time that all three of the crew members aboard the Soyuz spacecraft who were landing were conducting their second landing after a mission to the International Space Station. Mike Fink landed previously in October of 2004. Yuri Lonchikov landed in November of 2002, and Charles Simonyi had landed in April of 2007. The two members of the 18th crew to live and work aboard the International Space Station, as well as the spaceflight participant returning to Earth at 2:16 a.m. Central Time Wednesday. On the human body. And feeling fine. Again, the Soyuz spacecraft touching down near Zhezkazgan in Kazakhstan about 2:16 a.m. Central Time.
Houston Station, on space to ground 1, it's Expedition 19. We are ready for morning DPC. Congratulations with successful mission. One more outstanding space mission is marked in space history. Congratulations. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, Houston.
Good morning, Expedition 19. Congratulations, and congratulations on the real start of your increment solo here. It's been a great day for the program. We have very little for you guys today, since tomorrow's basically, or today rather, is a sleep day the entire day. You have a sleep day the entire day. You have no Form 24 that'll be coming up, and OSTP-V will show sleep the whole time. We're going to get you up a little short daily summary that has some key parameters and who the control team is around the world, but we're planning to all just give you the day off and join back up on GMT 99. And the one other thing that you can do when you have some time is recognize that your operator names in OSTP have changed.
This is Mission Control Houston. We're now receiving some live television pictures from the landing site near Jezkazgan in Kazakhstan, as we see healthy crew members have exited the Soyuz spacecraft and are enjoying 48-degree temperatures and clear skies in the area. Search and rescue teams have joined the crew at the landing site and are checking them over for their
Certainly, if we do have questions and we do
health condition.
we will be sure to call.
All right, sounds good. You guys should be getting some video of the crew on the ground now.
Close-up look at Soyuz Commander Yuri Lonchikov following his first long-duration spaceflight, his third spaceflight in total. Reports from the ground in Kazakhstan indicate that the crew members are happy and healthy and doing fine. Charles Simonier to Lonchikov's right there. Giving a thumbs up as he's welcomed home by the support teams. And Expedition 18 Commander Mike Fink joining his crewmates.
Прекрасно. Отлично, спасибо. Вот Земле. Theo, nice to see you. Привет, Земле. Возвращаемся. Что? О, Володенька. Я только смотрел тебе на телевизор. Ура! Вот он. Yes, I would. Just a little bit. Nope.
This is Mission Control Houston. A brief loss of our video there from the landing site in Kazakhstan. Back now with coverage of the Expedition 18 crew landing in a Soyuz spacecraft tonight at 1:24 a.m. Central Time, 1:16 p.m. Kazakh time. 3 crew members reporting that they are healthy and in good spirits following their re-entry and landing in the Soyuz spacecraft. Expedition crew members saying farewell to their Expedition 19 colleagues about 6:30 p.m. Yesterday, climbing into their Soyuz spacecraft, undocking from the space station at 10:55 p.m. Central Time Tuesday, performing a deorbit burn using the Soyuz engines to begin their descent toward Earth at 1:24 a.m. Today, Wednesday. And then touching down as expected at 2:16 a.m. Central Time Wednesday, 1:16 p.m. Kazakh time. Again, weather conditions very nice in Kazakhstan today. 48 degrees Fahrenheit is the temperature, sunny skies. Search and rescue teams quickly located the crew and helped them exit the capsule. On the ground with the search and rescue teams and the crew in Kazakhstan is Public Affairs Officer Rob Navius, who's ready to give us an on-the-scene report of the activities at the landing site. Go ahead, Rob.
Kelly, we're here at the landing site, just a few feet away from Soyuz TMA-13. It landed just a few kilometers long of its intended site, but essentially a dead-on, spot-on, bullseye landing for Mike Fink, Yuri Lanchikov, and Charles Simoni. Simoni currently being reunited with his wife. Mike Fink surrounded by Chief Astronaut Steve Lindsay and the head of the International Space Station program, Mike Safardini, who are on other helicopters to the landing site today. Soyuz, as you have mentioned, landed on its side. That is very typical for a Soyuz landing. It is breezy out here today. The wind caught the chutes, pulled the capsule over, but it was a very quick extraction out of the top hatch for the 3 crew members. They all look to be in excellent shape, and in fact, as we are speaking, wasting no time, Lanchikov is currently being assisted in his reclining chair. He'll be first out of the staging area here toward the inflatable medical tent just a few yards away. He will be followed shortly by Mike Fink and then by Charles Simoni, where they will get out of their Sokol entry suits and into more comfortable flight suits for the helicopter ride back to Karaganda. The crew is in outstanding shape, according to Dr. Steve Hart, the lead flight surgeon. Back to you, Kelly.
Thanks for that on-the-scene report, Rob. We're continuing to watch this live video as the crew members are assisted off to where they can get into more comfortable clothes and get ready for the helicopter flight back to Karaganda, the staging area, as they begin their trek back to Moscow. Again, all systems worked very well for today's undocking, deorbit, and landing of the Soyuz spacecraft. The commander of Expedition 18, of course, wrapping up 178 days in orbit on this flight, along with his flight engineer Yuri Lanchikov, who was the commander of the Soyuz spacecraft. They being joined by Charles Simoni on that descent after a couple of weeks in space for Simoni, his second trip to the International Space Station, the first repeat trip for a private citizen. Simoni flying to the space station under commercial agreement with the Russian Federal Space Agency. We can see here those flags waving in the strong breeze that was reported at the landing site. The Soyuz descent module in the background on its side. search and rescue team members and physicians assisting the crew, making sure that they're in good condition and ready to travel back to Karaganda and then on to Moscow. Again, this was the first time ever that all three of the crew members on a Soyuz landing have each landed a second time after a mission to the International Space Station.
Нет, это мы тебе не отдадим, не надейся на это. Это сумочка специальная. Чуть-чуть в сторону отойди. Ребят, туда не ходите! Туда не ходи! Там кто страна войти? Сзади не ходите! Так, это этот, Яков.
Бросовый ее просто и все. Или еще просто. Или через флаги. Да. А Саша? Знаешь, не рассказывай.
Саш, что, не звонить уже?
Я не уверен, но просто с кем-то на связи.
Мирайка его спрашивал.
Да, есть.
Все нормально, спасибо. Я первый раз позвонил, он доволен, картинка шла. Да, все отлично.
Видео хорошего качества.
Да, говорит, все нормально.
And this is Mission Control Houston with a replay of today's landing of the 17 Soyuz spacecraft with Expedition 18 Commander Mike Fink, Flight Engineer Yuri Lonchikov from the expedition, and the Soyuz commander in this case, and spaceflight participant Charles Simoni as they descend slowly through the Kazakh skies under parachutes. All systems worked exactly as had been planned on today's undocking, re-entry, and landing for the Soyuz spacecraft. These pictures recorded earlier as the final descent occurred and helicopters neared the scene. Helicopter blades being seen in the foreground. And a recorded touchdown of the 17 Soyuz spacecraft near Zhezgazgan, Kazakhstan earlier today, as recorded from helicopters that were arriving at the scene to assist the crew. Commander Mike Fink of Expedition 18, Commander Yuri Lonchikov of 17 Soyuz, and spaceflight participant Charles Simoni landing in the Soyuz at 2:16 a.m. Central Time, 1:16 p.m. Kazakh time. Parachutes initially slowing the descent of the Soyuz spacecraft, and then retro rockets firing at the last minute to soften the blow further. The spacecraft being pulled to its side as gusty winds at the Kazakh landing site pulled it over, but landing in a good configuration so that the crew members could quickly get out of the spacecraft. Temperatures at 48 degrees centigrade and sunny skies in Kazakhstan today. The crew members sitting in their reclining chairs for several minutes as they got their bearings following their return to one gravity after, for two of the crew members, 6 months on orbit without gravity. And the crew members already having been moved over into a location where they can get out of their Sokol spacesuits and get into some street clothes that are more comfortable for the helicopter ride back to Karaganda. This is Mission Control Houston. Again, these are videotape replays of the events immediately following today's landing in Kazakhstan of the Expedition 18 crew aboard the Soyuz spacecraft. The crew members already in the medical tent getting a preliminary examination by doctors following their 6 months in space for the 2 expedition crew members and the 2 weeks in space for spaceflight participant Charles Simonyi. So far, doctors reporting that the crew members are all in very good health and good spirits following their landing today.
Я видел тебя, Юрий. Я видел. Я тебя не вижу. Привет, дорогой. Еще раз поздравляю. Спасибо, спасибо, ребят, за репортаж, конечно. Спасибо огромное. Очень помогли. Спасибо.
Вы не пугались, когда где-то положили, что не сбились?
Потом они сбились сразу, сейчас им сказали, сбились сразу.
Mike.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Nice job.
Как Майкл?
Сейчас вы расскажете самое большое.
Когда Василий Васильевич сказал, что здесь солнышко, мы сразу обрадовались.
Не, ну так хорошо. Майкл куда? Сюда мы его дали? Да, ну такого уже.
Так грязно, так я вылез.
Да. 84 обгорел его, наверное. 84?
Я могу очень.
Готов? Пошли.
Чирикали, нас почти не слышали. Переносим! А? Точно руками донесем же.
Командира, давай, командир.
Все!
Юра, давай.
Валерий Иванович, командир первый, потом борт-инженер, потом участник.
Давайте.
what Earth is like.
Welcome back to gravity.
Фиксируй камеру, я уйду в чемодане на своей. Нет, это мы тебе не отдадим, не надейся на это. Это сумочка специально сейчас делает. Сразу сумка на телекамере. Ребят, туда не ходите! Туда не ходи! Там с той стороны обойди, сзади не ходи! Так, это этот, реактор. В этом контейнере. По-другому. Вперед, да?
Soyuz-Kapsel von der Internationalen Raumstation zur Erde zurückgekehrt. Sie landete sicher in der kasachischen Wüste. An Bord 2 Crewmitglieder der ISS und ein besonderer Fluggast, der Weltraumtourist Simony. Für den US-Milliardär war es bereits die zweite Reise ins All. Der 60-Jährige hat sich diesen Flug umgerechnet rund 26,5 Millionen Euro kosten lassen. 2 Wochen lang hatte er die Astronauten auf der ISS bei Experimenten unterstützt.
You're with BBC World News. Well, the last space tourist, for the moment at least, has landed safely in Kazakhstan. Charles Simonyi was on board a Russian Soyuz capsule carrying Russian and American astronauts returning from the International Space Station. Simonyi is a billionaire American software executive. He reportedly paid $35 million for the 11-day trip, his second into space. From Almaty, our Central Asia correspondent, Rayhan Dimitri, with the details.
This was a smooth landing. The billionaire American space tourist Charles Simonyi and 2 crew members of Expedition 18 touched down safely in the Kazakh steppe. On the ground, 200 search and rescue workers supported the landing operation. US astronaut Mike Fink and Russian cosmonaut Yuri Lanchikov have returned to Earth after spending 6 months on board of the International Space Station. For Mr. Simonyi, the journey was much shorter, just 14 days. But it was his second orbital mission. The former Microsoft executive could become the last space tourist for the foreseeable future because of the plans to double the International Space Station's permanent crew size, leaving no room for space adventurers. But the company which organizes commercial space flights has recently announced that they're negotiating with the Russian Space Agency to secure seats for the future. And the next space tourist could be blasting off to the International Space Station as early as September.
Die 18. Stammbesatzung der internationalen Raumstation ISS sicher zur Erde zurückgekehrt. In einer Soyuz-Raumkapsel landeten ein US-Astronaut und sein russischer Kollege in der kasachischen Wüste. Als dritter Mann war der US-Milliardär Simonyi an Bord. Er war 10 Tage im All und beendete bereits seine zweite Reise als Weltraumtourist.
On the streets of their capital, the North Korean people are celebrating what their leaders say is a brilliant triumph. Much of the outside world, however, believes they are applauding a giant lie. North Korea claims that Sunday's launch put the country's first satellite safely into orbit. But the US military, which was tracking the rocket, says that instead the payload splashed down in the ocean in a catastrophic failure. Here in South Korea, there is also a growing consensus that the launch went badly wrong. Nonetheless, North Korea has demonstrated an ability to fling its ill-fated satellite more than 3,000 kilometers from the launch site. Governments in the region and their US ally believe that the real intention all along was a test of the rocket itself, which could be used as a missile. Following the launch, North Korean state television has been broadcasting the first glimpse of the leader, Kim Jong-il, since he was reported to have suffered a stroke last August. Many observers believe the rocket launch was timed to give him a propaganda boost. The North Korean government's justification for its rocket was that it was part of a peaceful space program. It seems unlikely that it will ever admit to its own people that it was a costly failure. John Sudworth, BBC News, Seoul. North Korea claims it has successfully put a satellite into orbit. Outside observers, though, say it failed, splashing down instead in the Pacific Ocean. Much of the international community believes the real purpose all along was the test of the rocket itself, which could be used as a missile. But the UN Security Council has been deadlocked, with the US and Japan calling for a tough response, but China and Russia urging caution and restraint. But while the world struggles to come up with a coordinated response, North Korea is using its rocket launch to maximum propaganda effect back home. John Sudworth, BBC News, Seoul.
Dramatische Minuten heute im Berliner Zoo. Vor hunderten Zuschauern ist eine offenbar geistig verwirrte Frau ins Eisbärengehege gesprungen. Verzweifelt versuchten die Tierpfleger, die 32-Jährige aus dem Wassergraben zu ziehen. Sie kam schwer verletzt in ein Krankenhaus. Einzelheiten von Gordian Fritz.
Ein Besucher filmte die dramatische Rettung. Pfleger ziehen die Frau in einem Schwimmring aus dem Wasser, doch mehrmals rutscht sie ab. Immer wieder schnappt ein Eisbär nach der 32-Jährigen, Tierpfleger verjagen ihn mit Steinen. Und dann endlich gelingt es, die Frau aus dem Gehege zu ziehen. Notärzte versorgten sofort ihre schweren Bisswunden an Armen, Beinen und Hüfte.
Wie die Eisbären reagieren, kann man nicht vorhersagen. Sie können spielerisch mitarbeiten und sie hätten auch mit einem Biss das Leben beenden können.
Die offenbar geistig verwirrte Frau war kurz vor der Fütterung ins Gehege gesprungen. Sie soll noch gerufen haben, ich will mit den Eisbären schwimmen.
Sie ist auf die Reling ist sie gegangen und da wollten Leute auch sie runterbringen. Hat sie die Nase zugehalten und ist runtergesprungen. Die Schuhe hat sie nur ausgezogen.
Ob absichtlich oder durch einen Unfall, immer wieder gelangen Menschen in Tiergehege. 1996 stürzte in Amerika ein Junge in einen Gorillakäfig. Er überlebte nur, weil ein Weibchen ihn beschützte und zum Ausgang trägt. 1997 wurde im Nürnberger Zoo ein Mann von Löwen getötet. Er war aus Selbstmordabsicht in das Gehege gesprungen. In vielen Zoos verhindern die zuschauerfreundlichen Barrieren zwar, dass Tiere ausbrechen können, aber nicht, dass die Menschen zu den Tieren gelangen.
Etwas, was wir nie verhindern können. Unsere Kollegen haben dankenswerterweise hervorragend reagiert. In diesem Fall hat die Frau wahrscheinlich sehr viel mehr Glück als Verstand gehabt.
Der Berliner Zoo teilte heute nach der Rettung außerdem mit, dass weder Eisbär Knut noch seine Mutter an dem Vorfall beteiligt waren.
Mit über 25 Grad war das heute aus meteorologischer Sicht der erste richtige Sommertag. Und das Anfang April. Bei Mannheim wurden sagenhafte 28 Grad gemessen. Wer frei hatte, tummelte sich draußen in der Sonne oder direkt am Wasser. Nur in großen Teilen Spaniens und Portugals, wo viele ihren Osterurlaub verbringen, dort regnet es.
Wenige Wolken, viel Sonnenschein und im Westen gab es mit knapp über 25 Grad bereits den ersten Sommertag. Und es geht morgen ähnlich weiter. Der Kar-Samstag hat viel Sonne zu bieten. Lediglich im Westen nachmittags vereinzelt Schauer oder auch mal Gewitter. Verbreitet über 20 Grad, am Rhein bis 25 und nur an der Küste bei auflandigem Wind weiterhin kühler.
North Korea's foreign ministry says, quote, "We have no choice but to further strengthen our nuclear deterrent to cope with additional military threats by hostile forces." Japan strongly urging North Korea to return to those six-party talks. Russia says that it regrets Pyongyang's decision. So what's the reaction from China? Now, China's the country that has the most influence on North Korea. John Vos has just returned from a briefing by the Chinese Foreign Ministry in Beijing. John, what did they say?
Well, Zane, lots of talk of hoping the negotiations could continue, a lot of hope that all sides would remain cool and show restraint, urging Pyongyang not to walk away, to return to those talks. No word, though, on what China actually plans to do to get the North Koreans back into the six-party process. In all, it was a pretty lukewarm response, which reflects the position that China has taken all along in response to Pyongyang's rocket launch earlier this month. It really is a stark difference compared to more than 2 years ago after North Korea tested a nuclear device. Back then, China called it a brazen act. In fact, most analysts believe it was China which dragged the North back into the six-party process. There is no indication at this stage if China is prepared to do that again, Zane.
How soon could North Korea get back to the bomb-making business, John?
Well, this could be one of the reasons why China is sort of sitting back and waiting and watching, because if you cast your mind back to June of last year when there was that dramatic explosion of the cooling tower, the Yongbyon nuclear plant. Even before that, several months before that, technicians had in fact began disabling the reactor at Yongbyon. And the experts say that it could take about a year to rebuild that cooling tower. There's some disagreement, some say more or less, but the consensus is around a year before that cooling tower is up and running again, before they can start making plutonium. So on the positive side of the ledger, there is this view that if North Korea walks away from the six-party talks, there is still some time to get them back into this to continue the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, Zane.
CNN's John Vos in Beijing. Thanks, John.
Vermelden die Propagandanachrichten. Die stillgelegte Atomanlage in Yongbyon solle daher wieder in Betrieb genommen werden, wie es heißt, die atomare Abschreckung auszubauen. 2007 hatten sich die Staaten der Sechs-Parteien-Gespräche darauf geeinigt, das nordkoreanische Atomprogramm stufenweise zu beenden. Das Symbol dafür war die Sprengung des Kühlturms von Yongbyon. In einigen Monaten könnte die Anlage nun wieder betriebsbereit sein für die Produktion von waffenfähigem Plutonium. Der umstrittene Raketenstart, das Militärregime in Pyongyang verteidigt ihn als Teil eines angeblich friedlichen Weltraumprogramms. Die USA und viele andere sprechen hingegen vom Test einer Langstreckenrakete und bezweifeln, dass ein Kommunikationssatellit im All ausgesetzt wurde. Nordkoreas Reaktion auf die Erklärung des Weltsicherheitsrates kommt nicht überraschend. Schon vor Wochen hatte das Land damit gedroht, bei einer Verurteilung aus den Verhandlungen über sein Atomprogramm auszusteigen. Die Sechs-Parteien-Gespräche sind in den vergangenen Jahren mehrfach ins Stocken geraten. Diktator Kim Jong-il hat sein Atom- und Raketenprogramm immer wieder als Druckmittel benutzt, um zum Beispiel mehr Nahrungsmittel und Energiehilfen zu bekommen. Nordkorea hat die Sechser-Gespräche nie gemocht, weil da auch die Erzfeinde Südkorea und Japan mit am Tisch sitzen dürfen. Das Regime von Kim Jong-il wollte immer Verhandlungen nur mit den USA. Aber die Bush-Regierung hatte sich darauf nie eingelassen. Jetzt provoziert Nordkorea weiter, denn es will US-Präsident Obama zwingen zum Dialog mit dem Diktator.
Die Fahrt zur Arbeit, eine Fahrt in die Katastrophe. (5:47 Uhr). Die erste Schwebebahn an diesem Morgen ist voll besetzt. Es ist der erste Tag nach den Osterferien. 52 Menschen sind auf dem Weg zur Arbeit. In diesem Zug sitzt auch Constanzo Di Maggio. Er ist Gerüstbauer. Sein Auftraggeber sitzt in Barmen. Doch dort kommt der Italiener nie an.
Bei der Hausarbeit morgens hörte ich plötzlich die Rettungsfahrzeuge vorbeifahren. Und da habe ich gedacht, mein Gott, da ist ja was Schreckliches passiert. Mach mal das Radio an. Und dann auf einmal, die Schwebebahn ist in Wuppertal bei Robert-Dorn-Platz in die Wupper gestürzt. Ich dachte sofort an meinen Mann.
Rund 8 Meter tief fällt die Bahn, nur wenig abgebremst durch ein Fernwärmerohr. Die Bahn zerbricht, Bug und Heck liegen in der Wupper. Selbst für erfahrene Rettungskräfte wie den Notarzt Klaus Westphal ist das eine völlig neue Situation.
Als ich hier ankam, da herrschte eine gespenstische Stille. Der erste Gedanke war, hier hat keiner überlebt. Aber dann kamen doch nach und nach Schmerzensschreie, Gestöhne durch. Und man sah auf der gegenüberliegenden Uferseite, dass sich dort Patienten hingeschleppt hatten.
Polizisten und Sanitäter steigen in die Wupper und tragen die Verletzten ans Ufer. Hier werden sie sofort versorgt. Hauptverkehrsstraßen werden zu Hubschrauberlandeplätzen. Schaulustige drängen sich auf den Zugangsstraßen. Die Unfallstelle selbst jedoch ist komplett abgeriegelt. So kommen auch die Angehörigen der Opfer kaum zu den Lazarettzelten durch. Als Rosemarie Di Maggio sich endlich zum Unglücksort durchgekämpft hat, sagt ihr zunächst niemand, wie es um ihren Mann steht.
Wie ich dann hörte, Frau DiMaggio, ihr Mann ist tot. Da hat es mir den Boden weggerissen. Ich weiß nur, ich habe fürchterlich geschrien. Ich habe nur geschrien.
Die Ursache für das Unglück, eine mit den Schienen fest verschraubte Stahlkralle. Während Sanierungsarbeiten am Wochenende hatte sie die Gerüste stabilisiert. Vor der Freigabe für den Zugverkehr hätten Bauarbeiter sie unbedingt entfernen müssen. Das geschieht nicht. Sie vergessen das 100 Kilo schwere Teil, ein unüberwindliches Hindernis. Der Zug prallt dagegen, entgleist.
Für Wuppertal ist er wie ein Erdbeben.
Also ich finde das total schrecklich und eigentlich unglaublich.
Erstmal Probefahrt machen müssen, bevor sie Leute da reinlassen. Ne?
Tatsächlich, trotz der Schlamperei der Bauarbeiter hätte das Unglück vermieden werden können. Mit einer Probefahrt vor der Freigabe wäre die massive Stahlkralle rechtzeitig entdeckt worden. Doch diese Testfahrten sind gesetzlich nicht vorgeschrieben. Die Wuppertaler Stadtwerke verzichteten darauf. Bittere Bilanz dieser Versäumnisse? Neben Costanzo DiMaggio noch 4 weitere Tote. 47 Menschen überleben zum Teil schwer verletzt. Viele sind arbeitsunfähig, werden ihr Leben lang unter den Folgen des Unglücks leiden. Der Kampf um angemessene Entschädigungen zieht sich teilweise über Jahre hin. Im August 2000 beginnt die Verhandlung gegen 3 Mitarbeiter der Stadtwerke und 5 Beschäftigte der Baufirmen. Bei der Urteilsverkündung sitzt Rosemarie DiMaggio mit im Saal. 5 der Angeklagten werden freigesprochen, die anderen zu Geldbußen und Bewährungsstrafen verurteilt. Für viele Opfer und Hinterbliebene ein viel zu mildes Urteil. Rosemarie DiMaggio hingegen versucht, ihren Frieden zu finden.
Ich frage mich immer wieder, warum musste das geschehen? Aber ich möchte auch wirklich niemanden da einen Vorwurf machen, denn rückgängig machen kann man das nicht.
Erst 2 Jahre nach dem Tod ihres Mannes kann Rosemarie DiMaggio wieder in eine Schwebebahn steigen. Sie hofft, dass sich das Unglück von 1999 nicht wiederholt. Eine Änderung hat es seit dem Unfall immerhin gegeben. Mittlerweile fährt eine Testbahn jeden Morgen die Strecke ab. Zur Sicherheit.
Die Wuppertaler Schwebebahn, das Wahrzeichen natürlich der Stadt. Vor 10 Jahren ist sie abgestürzt. Es gab damals Tote, es gab Verletzte. Und morgen jährt sich dieser Unglückstag. Und wir wollen jetzt in unseren Lokalzeitgeschichten noch einmal auf diesen Absturz zurückblicken.
Das war eine wirklich irreale Situation.
Es war eine absolute Stille da, man sah keine Menschen, man sah keine Bewegung, keine Hilferufe.
Ich war voller Angst. Ich dachte an meinen Mann, der fuhr ja damit zur Arbeit.
Nach dem Koma, ich habe gedacht, was mache ich hier denn? Wer hat mich hier gebracht und was passiert bei mir?
Es ist der Morgen des 12. April 1999. Um 5:48 Uhr stürzt die erste Schwebebahn des Tages in die eiskalte Wupper. Der Zug prallt auf eine Fernwärmeleitung, die an dieser Stelle über den Fluss führt. Nur wenige Minuten später beginnt eine gut organisierte Rettungsaktion.
Wir können wirklich sagen, dass das gut funktionierte, deswegen, weil wir seit 10 Jahren schon vorher uns intensiv mit der Problematik befasst haben in Wuppertal. Was tun wir, wenn wir mal eine größere Schadensstelle in Wuppertal haben? Und angefangen hat das alles 1988 bei dem Flugzeugabsturz in Remscheid. Da waren wir ja auch zur Hilfe gerufen worden. Und von da an haben wir, wie gesagt, sehr intensiv Strukturen aufgebaut bei uns.
In der Unglücksbahn sitzt auch Costanzo DiMaggio. Der Gerüstbauer ist auf dem Weg zur Arbeit. Seine Frau Rosemarie erfährt aus dem Radio von dem Absturz. Mit ihrer Tochter eilt sie zur Unfallstelle.
Wie ich dann hörte, Frau DiMaggio, ihr Mann ist tot, da hat es mir den Boden weggerissen. Ich weiß nur, ich habe fürchterlich geschrien. Ich habe nur geschrien. Und dann war ich im Notfallzelt. Ja.
Costanzo DiMaggio ist nicht das einzige Opfer. 4 weitere Menschen verlieren bei dem Absturz ihr Leben. 47 werden verletzt. Rettungshubschrauber fliegen die schlimmsten Fälle in die umliegenden Kliniken. Während die Schwerverletzten um ihr Leben kämpfen, wird vor Ort die Ursache des Absturzes deutlich. Eine Stahlkralle, die nach nächtlichen Bauarbeiten an der Fahrschiene vergessen wurde.
Das Drehgestell ist mit diesem Montagestück kollidiert, was letztlich zum Absturz geführt hat. Zurzeit wird noch ermittelt, welche Verantwortlichkeiten bestanden haben hinsichtlich der Freigabe der Strecke, wer für das Zurücklassen des Montagestückes verantwortlich war.
4 Tage nach dem Unglück werden die ersten Opfer zu Grabe getragen. Wuppertal trauert. Die Staatsanwaltschaft lässt den Unglückszug zur Untersuchung abtransportieren. 2 Monate später geht die Schwebebahn wieder in Betrieb unter lautem Beifall der Wuppertaler. Trotz allem ist der Absturz in den Köpfen aber auch heute noch präsent.
Schon ein mulmiges Gefühl, wenn man hier steht und eigentlich weiß man immer, dass hier was passiert ist und hat schon ein bisschen Angst.
Nur hin und wieder, wenn man halt vielleicht an die Stelle vorbeikommt und dieses Schild hier vorne sieht, dann denkt man darüber nach. Aber ich habe jetzt keine Angst, wenn ich da einsteige. Das ist einfach Schicksal.
Schicksal oder Schlamperei? Das müssen nach der Tragödie die Richter klären. Im August 2000 beginnt der Strafprozess vor dem Wuppertaler Landgericht. 4 Angeklagte werden freigesprochen, 2 Stadtwerke, Kontrolleure und ein Monteur erhalten Haftstrafen auf Bewährung.
Ich möchte auch wirklich niemanden da einen Vorwurf machen, denn rückgängig machen kann man das nicht.
Viele Überlebende des Schwebebahnabsturzes leiden bis heute unter den Folgen. Sayed Khoury etwa wird wegen seiner schweren Verletzungen nie mehr arbeiten können. Er trainiert täglich, um überhaupt gehen zu können. Doch der Vater von 5 Kindern hat trotz des schlimmen Einschnitts in seinem Leben seinen Frieden gefunden.
Ich möchte sagen, zu Gott sei Dank, ich bin ganz zufrieden mit meinem Leben. Ich bin überlebt und für die Kinder, ich bin da und alles in Ordnung ist.
Mehr als 3,3 Millionen Euro Wiedergutmachung haben die Wuppertaler Stadtwerke inzwischen an die Opfer gezahlt. Damit sich die Katastrophe nicht wiederholt, hat das Unternehmen wichtige Abläufe verändert.
Als Konsequenz verkehren jeden Morgen von Oberbarm und von Vorwinkel aus Vorzüge ohne Fahrgäste. Bei weiteren Arbeiten am Schwebebahngerüst wird also ein Montageteil nicht mehr im Fahrbereich des Schwebebahnzuges montiert werden.
Am Unglücksort ist heute nichts mehr von den Unfallfolgen zu sehen. Nur eine Gedenktafel erinnert noch an den schwärzesten Tag in der Geschichte der Schwebebahn.